Hello to all my bookish friends out there. I decided tonight that I'm going to do a video I spoke about before, my top 10 mangas, and as you can see on that top shelf up there, I have read plenty. I own, I want to say, about 600 volumes total, and I've read probably double that. That translates into probably about 100 series, I believe. I didn't actually count how many I read, but I know it was a lot. So, without further ado, I'll get to the top 10 countdown. Number 10 on my list is Meryu Puri, which is short for Merachant Prince. And this is one that I actually discovered by liking some of the author's other works. And that author is Mitsuri Hino. And I now have pretty much everything she has written that has been translated. But this is one of my favorites of her. And it's just a short series. And it is extremely sweet. But it is also a little problematic as you follow the main character, the main female character, who is between 15 and 17, and then our male lead is 4 or 5. And obviously this being a romance, that is a little problematic. However, one of the ways they work around this is that he is under a curse to age when he is in the dark. If he's in complete dark, he will turn into a 17-year-old. And the only way for him to turn back to his regular age is by a kiss. So, of course, that's what happens when he meets the main character. And another thing that makes this a little less problematic is that he is from a fantasy realm in which the characters do not age the same as humans, and they live for hundreds and thousands of years. So this was one, it definitely has its problems, which is why it's this low on the list, but I did find it extremely cute, and I thought that some of the issues were well done. Like the main character, the main female character, is very hesitant to kiss him at first and everything, because even though she's explained before he asks her to, he explains to her that this will put me back in my correct body, she's still very hesitant because he's a child and much younger than me, so I'm not entirely comfortable doing this. So I did like that there was that acknowledgement of that. Coming in at number 9 is Aqua/Aria. Aqua is 2 volumes that is a prequel to Aria. And this is just a very relaxing story that takes place on Mars. I believe it's like 300 years in the future, when Mars was terraformed, but they accidentally flooded it, making the whole entire planet of Mars like modern day Venice. And it follows our main character, who wants to learn to row a gondola through these canals. And it's basically just a slice of life. It follows her learning how to do this and making friends and adjusting to the slowed down pace of life here on Mars, which is otherwise known as Aqua. Now, this series had a little bit of a bump in publishing back in the early 2000s, which is when it started coming out, when I first got into manga. There were many more manga publishers, so one of them was ADV. ADV had this series, and they published 3 of the volumes. Then, when they went out of business, Tokyopop picked this series up, and they published the 2 volumes of Aqua for the prequel, the 3 volumes that ADV had published, and 3 additional volumes. And then they went out of business. The total series is 14 volumes. That's the 2 volumes of Aqua and then 12 of Aria. Well, thankfully, in the last 4 or 5 years, Tokyopop has come back, and they are republishing mangas that they had started and that are completed in Japan, and they're republishing them in omnibuses. So I have these gorgeous masterpiece editions that have this lovely gold foiling, as you can see, and I just find this such a calm and relaxing story. And this was one of the first 3 manga series that I bought. The first 3 were this one, To Heart, and then More Starlight to Your Heart. And then my collection exploded from them. And this was my favorite of those 3, and so that's why this one kind of has a special place as well. Number 8 on my list is Nana, and this is contemporary with a few other of the mangas that are coming up later in this list. This was also published by Soho Beat, and I absolutely loved Soho Beat back in high school. I still like them now, but I'm kind of, obviously drifting away because they're more towards the high school romances. But Nana was not. Nana was about 2 20-something girls named Nana who were ready to strike out on their own. And when they meet each other, they become instant best friends. And I did not expect to like this series as much as I did. I actually swore when I read a few chapters in Soho Beat that I would not buy the manga because I was trying to cut down on my book buying at that point. And this is, the best way to describe it is it is a soap opera in manga form. There are so many things that just scream soap opera, but yet the characters are so compelling that it just kept the story going. Unfortunately, the mangaka fell sick around volume 21, and so she took an indefinite hiatus, and there has been no news, no new volumes in over 10 years. So, and I really want to know how this ends, and it's really frustrating because we only need, 1, maybe 2 more volumes to wrap it up. But, again, if you like soap operas, if you like drama, you will absolutely love this. If you like character-driven stories, you will absolutely love this as well. Number 7 on my list has a special place in my personal manga history. When I was in high school, I had only read maybe 3 series of manga. This was when I had started to watch Full Metal Alchemist, and as I said, that was my first anime. And our school librarian, knowing this, when she got the Soho Beat magazine, she let me have it, and I absolutely fell in love with Godchild. And the main reason was I became obsessed with the main character, Kane, and all of my friends who knew me from this time still laugh at me about it. And I say, you know what? I don't care. The manga, other than having, this great main character that I absolutely loved, the plot, the mystery was really good, and it's just a really enjoyable Victorian England mystery macabre story. I will say it's definitely on the darker side, so if you don't like very dark things to happen, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you don't mind the darkness, at least, I would say you could definitely give it a try, especially if you like mysteries. And the Victorian era clothing is very beautiful, and just the art is really great in this. Number 6 on my list is a more modern manga. It was published from 2019, I believe, until 2022, the very beginning of 2022 in America. And this is also one that is just a plain contemporary romance, which I honestly don't usually like just the adult contemporary romances. And I used to love the, young adult contemporary romances, but I've kind of fallen out of them as well. But I feel like in this one, just the chemistry is so well done, and the romance is so sweet, and there's no outside drama. It's all about the characters getting to know each other and falling deeper and deeper in love. And they just make such a great couple. There's such a good, relationship there. It's so strong. They obviously care about each other so much. And it just had me very happy the whole time I was reading it. And I was just like, this is what romance should be. This is a great relationship. They are relationship goals. That's all there is to it. And it dives into a little bit of, bullying, social awkwardness due to that, and the scars that are left behind, even into adulthood. I feel like none of that's dived into super deeply, but it's enough that you get a really good understanding of both characters. 5th on my list, and my highest ranked Soho manga, is Vampire Knight. This is one I discovered around the same time, or actually right after I discovered Godchild. It actually took over Godchild's spot in the Soho Beat magazine, and so I read a couple chapters there, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful, and the idea of this academy with the vampires and the humans who kind of coexist but basically barely cross paths was just very intriguing to me. And then this is one that also has an anime, and one of the things that I absolutely loved about the anime is that my favorite character in Vampire Knight, which is Zero, is voiced by the same voice actor as Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist. And Fullmetal Alchemist was my first anime, so that has a special place in my heart, as do all the voice actors. And just the fact that my favorite character was had my favorite voice actor, I loved. And Vampire Knight is one that, though it is a romance, there is a lot of action. There is actually a lot of character development. There is a lot of drama, which is why it is Soho as well as the romance in it. And this is another one, though. The ending completely and totally ticked me off. And so that's why it didn't get any higher than here. And I do have to mention that my boyfriend, knowing how much I loved this series, bought me the limited edition of the last volume, which had an absolutely gorgeous cover and came with an art book. Number 4 on my list is Gunslinger Girl, and this is another one that I watched the anime first, and I really liked the anime, so I went out and got the mangas. And this is set in Italy, and it follows these young girls who have, for various different reasons, lost their families, and they had traumatic things happen to them physically, be it, abuse, accidents, and so forth. And then later on in the book, we get some who have had cancer, and so, they kind of decide to either they decide to undergo this brainwashing and become assassins for the Italian government, or in a few cases they were so badly injured and there was nobody to take care of them, so they became wards of the state. So the state decided to make them into these assassins. And it follows all these girls and their handlers, and I just really enjoy the action in it. There is some character development. I feel like this series is a little shallow on character development, which is why it's a little further down on the list. And the character designs, though, are great, and I think all the characters are really cute, and you do get some, like I said, absolutely great action scenes, and I feel like this is one that doesn't have a whole lot of fan service either, and it's just an overall really interesting manga, and it does have just a little bit of depth towards the end, and the ending is one that's absolutely heartbreaking at times, and so this is another one that I really highly recommend if you like action. Number 3 on my list is Chainsaw Man, and this one, the first arc is done, and the second arc has now started. I read all of Chainsaw Man in about 2 days on the Shonen Jump app, and for some reason, I just absolutely loved it. Even though, it's kind of the same as other worlds in certain ways, that, there's, in this world, there's demons that have to be fought. And in other mangas, it's ghouls, it's zombies, and you follow the average guy who gets wrapped up in this. But for some reason, Chainsaw Man just absolutely resonated with me, I guess. And I loved it. I loved the action. I loved Denji. I loved Puchita. And the designs of the demons are absolutely amazing. You have Denji as full Chainsaw Man with, the chainsaw head and arms and legs. And there's just so much action. And then the idea behind that, the more you fear a thing, the stronger the demon is. So, for example, a spider demon. A lot of people fear spiders. That would be pretty strong. But say something like a dog demon, might be middling strong, because some people are scared of dogs, but I don't know that, that would be as many people as are afraid of, say a chainsaw, a gun, a knife, a sword. And like I said, this is just a really interesting world to me, and the character designs are great, the action is great, and it feels like you get a lot of character development too. You'll have a huge arc of a fight, and then you'll have a little bit of downtime after that fight to get the character developments and everything. And so I'm super excited to get into the second arc of Chainsaw Man, especially with all the questions I'm left with from the first arc. And I absolutely recommend this. The only reason it is not number 1 or even number 2 is that it is definitely more of a shonen for young boys rather than a seinen, which is more for adults, specifically adult men, but obviously, yeah, anybody can enjoy it. But I feel like this doesn't delve as much into the kind of like the mental state of characters. Not that it's topical and the characters do get developed, but there's not a whole lot of moral grayness, and some of the humor is definitely juvenile, although a lot of Denji's reasoning, the way he grew up and he just wants this, and then he slowly starts to realize that, eventually you'll just keep wanting more and more. But I feel like it's a little on the juvenile side. But again, if you enjoy the action, I definitely recommend it. And I don't really think there's much that would make somebody who enjoys action not like this. So my second favorite manga is Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. I've spoken about this many times on this channel, mostly in my book hauls, because this is still ongoing, and I've been picking up the volumes as it goes on. And I've actually been holding off on reading them because I want to have, a good long run that I can read and really enjoy this. But I really have enjoyed what I've read so far. And so this follows a 20-something man, Akira, who works at a black company, is what they're called. And basically, it's absolutely soul-draining, soul-crushing. His bosses are complete and utter jerks. He's required to work an insane amount of overtime for free. And due to all of this, he's not necessarily depressed, suicidal, but, it opens up near the beginning with the scene of him looking at a train running by and just thinking, if I jumped under this, I wouldn't have to go to work. And so you can get an idea of how bad his life is. And then when the zombie apocalypse happens, his first thought is, oh shit, how am I going to get to work? And then he sees outside that there's even more zombies, and he's like, wait, they're all zombies. I don't have to go to work. Hell yes! And his life just completely changes, and he enjoys himself so much. He makes a list of 100 things he wants to do before he becomes a zombie. Something simple such as, I want to grow a beard. Something as simple as, I want to get my apartment 100% clean. I want to read all of this famous manga series that's super long. Some that are a little deeper, like, I want to see my parents one last time. And along with all of this, he runs into other survivors, one of whom is a college classmate who was on the rugby team with him. And so far, the funniest scene with him is in the second volume, when they find zombie sharks. And these zombie sharks can walk on land. And so, in order to distract the zombie sharks, this buddy strips down and climbs out of an air vent and shakes his rear end in front of the shark. Here, sharky, sharky, sharky. and then the shark tries to bite him and he freaks out, and it's absolutely hilarious. So if you like something that's kind of, it's supposed to be dark but it's really funny, and then you get some of the dark humor in it, definitely check this one out. Before I reveal my number one favorite manga, I have 5 honorable mentions. We have Golden Kamui, which is a absolutely lovely, very well researched historical fiction. Then we have Ouran High School Host Club, which is absolutely hilarious. We have Anne Freaks, a very dark and disturbing short series. Full Metal Alchemist, which of course has to be here. It was my first anime, my first more adult manga, even though it's not really adult. And then we have Cardcaptor Sakura, which is just extremely cute and was also a cartoon that I watched as a kid before I knew what anime was. So my number one all-time favorite manga for right now is Dead Man Wonderland, and this follows a young boy named Ganta. He is 14 years old, and he is living in the aftermath of a huge earthquake that has destroyed Tokyo. However, this is not the main point of the story. The main point of the story is that all the children in his class, except for him, were brutally murdered. And through some machinations of the Dead Man Wonderland prison, he is framed for these murders. And the Dead Man Wonderland prison is something that came out of the Great Tokyo earthquake. Obviously, there was a lot of financial hardships and such, and so prisons became privately owned. And Dead Man Wonderland is a very unique prison. It is also an amusement park, and the inmates, those who are nonviolent offenders, serve out their sentence by running the rides, serving the drinks, the food, etc. Those who are on death row, such as Ganta, are fitted with a collar that injects poison into them. They must eat a piece of candy every 3 days to counteract this poison. If they do not, death sentence served. And they are also made to compete in some pretty terrible games. And this is just overall a very dark manga, but it is something that it just captivated me for some reason. And it was also made into an anime. And I watched the anime first because that actually came out in America first. And then the manga started being published. And the two match up pretty well, except the anime is a lot more brutal. For example, in one episode of the anime, the characters are in a death race, and they do actually die in the anime. In the manga, however, it is still a death race, but it's more that the race would injure them, and then their injuries would be treated, and if they succumb to them, oh well. Whereas, like I said, in the anime, they just flat out die in the race. So this is one that's definitely not for everybody, and there's a whole lot more in it. And the character designs are also done by the same people who designed Eureka 7, which is another anime I love. And so there's a character in here who's a very important character named Shiro. And she looks very similar to Anemone, and I couldn't put my finger on why until I read that. So yeah, that is my #1 favorite. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of these. If you have any that are like any of these that you think I would enjoy. And I will see you in the book cave next time.